All right, 7:37 in the morning. We've got Brian Schmitz in the house. Let us know what's happening in the insurance world.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, and by the way, right after this, we've got our Wednesday helpline.
Oh, yeah, we're looking, that's always,
Those are fun.
yeah, those are fun. Oh, it's
Yes.
Okay, so
It's
right
y'all's
now, you know,
turn.
with high school graduations are going on right now. If you're like us, you started getting some announcements in and all that, and it's a fun time of year. But a lot of people that graduate from high school are going to be headed to college in the fall. So we thought we should talk about some things that are important for your student when they go off to college.
Have a lot of money.
Well, we're just talking about the insurance aspects.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, still have a lot of money.
So one of the policies that you might want to consider getting for your child is a renter's policy. If they live in an apartment complex, especially like in a city, they're probably going to have to anyway. What I would recommend is talk to your agent and find out exactly what coverage your homeowners would apply possibly for liability or for the things that they have, but more than likely you're going to find out it's very limited coverage, and a renter's policy is very inexpensive, and it covers contents of where you're renting and then liability. So if somebody gets hurt on the premise, or I've even got a great claim story I'll share it at the end. It's of how a college student can cause liability for their parents. So renter's insurance is the first thing. And honestly, if you're listening, anybody that rents a house, look at renter's insurance. You're probably going to pay, depending on your limits and where you're located, $300 a year, $500 a year.
It's really
inexpensive. So renter's insurance is something you should consider for your student.
And
Yeah, that's a big deal because you could just turn your back for a second. Something would be gone in no time.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I mean, there's all sorts of things that you can cause, as you know, especially with these kids that are going out on their own. This is their first time away. We all make stupid decisions, and sometimes, you catch an entire apartment complex on fire, or you let your bath overflow.
Mm-hmm.
Oops.
Whoops.
You get that new puppy dog, and you don't really train it that well, and the neighbor comes over and gets bit. I mean, things happen, and especially, you're talking 18, 19, 20-year-olds. They're just learning.
So we had a situation, and these people do not live here. We insured them for years. Their son, who was not yet 21, was off at college, and he was part of a fraternity. That fraternity hosted a party in which our client's son did not attend, but they were hazing, and a student died from alcohol poisoning, and their parents sued every member of the fraternity. And oddly enough, our insured's farm and ranch owners liability defended them, but who would, they didn't have to.
Thought that.
Well, yeah, and the whole thing is you have to. They didn't have to hire a lawyer. I'll get my words out here in a second. Because what you would normally have to do if somebody sues you, you hire a lawyer. But if you have liability insurance, that's part of it, the defense, and then pay on your behalf. Now, the student, they didn't have to pay. They didn't win. They weren't there.
Right.
But they still had to defend it. So that's just one of many things that can happen when you're off at college.
I got a question.
Okay.
Let's say you move out, you got a laptop, okay? And you go to your dorm, all that stuff. Do you need to take pictures of all the stuff that you take to your dorm or to an apartment or something like that?
It's a really
Content.
good idea.
Yeah.
Because once say there's a fire and it's all gone, and you're having to recreate what you had.
You have to prove it.
You have to prove it, or even just remember, what you have. Like I had $35,000 of Louis Vuitton purses, I wish, but but taking pictures of everything is very smart. That way you've established that you had it. You can remember the things that you had. That's good.
Okay,
That's
well
good
then-
advice for anybody.
Okay, then if the kid's going to be moving into a dorm or to an apartment or whatever, what are some of the things everything, or do they need to take pictures of shoes? I mean, what do they need to be doing there?
It's value. It's what can you afford to lose. If you can afford to lose it, why insure it? But if you can't, like you have a student out there and you have a $3,500 laptop, can that student afford to replace that if it decides to walk away at a coffee shop? That's those are questions that you have to ask yourself. And then you go through and you say, hey, do I have the receipts for this? Do I have any way of proving that I own this item that I want to insure? You might need to either establish some type of spreadsheet or some type of photographical evidence, so that way you show ownership and prove that in case of a loss.
Okay, because that's my thing is that, okay, I've got all this stuff I'm hauling in, and every college freshman takes way more.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, way more than they need to take, and when you find out, you don't need all that stuff. But I get the thing about, like, your phones and your laptops and stereos and stuff like that, but I wasn't sure about, like, clothes or,
I mean, those things would be
things.
covered under the renter's policy, but, it's just up to you, the pictures are just something like Brad said to establish what you have and also just to help you remember. So, I mean, I don't think you need a picture of your blue shirt, a picture of
Okay,
your
that's
green
what I
shirt.
was wondering,
I don't think
yeah.
you need to get that into
Right.
it, but the big ticket items, the laptop, for a college student, that is a big ticket item. That's a lot of money they wouldn't
Yeah.
be able to replace.
Yeah, because the schools here, they provide them. When you get off to college, man,
No, you're on your own.
you're on your own,
Yeah.
and you got to be careful of that stuff. And I mean, I know of a guy that he went to college right out of high school. He was unloading all his stuff into his dorm room, went back out to his car to get another box, came back and it was all gone.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. Nowadays, at least there's those cameras we were talking about
Yeah.
earlier
Right.
that will deter some of that, but, and like I said, if your child's moving into an apartment, they're gonna probably have to have renter's insurance.
Mhm.
They're just gonna make them, but it's really good for anybody, because,
And it's so inexpensive
Oh, yeah.
for that coverage, so
Oh,
that's
yeah.
fantastic.
Okay, what about, let's just say, 4 guys get together and say, we're going to rent a house. Okay, how does that work? I mean, if you got one guy that has it.
yeah, they would each need to have renter's insurance, each
Because it
person.
establishes on the individual,
Right.
not the area.
Okay.
Unlike a homeowner's, which you're insuring the location and the property, a renter policy, you're insuring your contents and liability against you. Not necessarily, like, you're not covering the property itself because they'll have coverages elsewhere. But if you cause damages to the property that you're held liable for, that's where your liability limit kicks in. So let's say if you're going down to a bigger city, Dallas, Austin, Houston area, and you're living in one of these multi-unit 4-story apartment buildings, is $300,000 enough for your liability? You might want to consider $500,000 or kick it up a little bit more, because if you cause a fire that could possibly burn multiple people's apartments plus, an entire building, you're looking at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of damages. So, looking at those situations, some of these older dorms, you could cause a fire. Oh, you got my little cook stove out here and trying to cook my ramen. Whoopsie, forgot it was on stove. Oops.
Well, what are the bigger problems? Is it theft, fire, all the above? I mean,
Anything can happen. Typically, theft is what you see with a college student off at college. That's usually the claims you see. Fortunately, we haven't had any where the dorms or the apartment complexes are burned, that kind of
But I
thing.
was a college student one time, and I could see it.
Oh yeah, I'm just surprised. I was laughing when you said that about the universities, because the dorm that our son did his first 2 years at Hardin Simmons, I think it was built by cinder blocks, but a man that was in his 70s took Jake on a tour of Hardin Simmons and pointed out which dorm room he stayed in.
Yeah.
So yeah.
they weren't the most modern
Right.
accommodations.
I just think they were made out of stuff that can't burn.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, just asbestos and
I
stuff.
watched a young lady when I was at Cisco College. They built a new dorm down at the bottom of the hill, and she decided to dry her T-shirt, and she put it in the fire sprinkler, and it has a little bowl, and so
Oh.
she pierced it, and she caused all this water
Water.
damage.
There you go,
So
perfect
that-
example.
yes.
That one is a good example. That happens a lot at hotels.
Yeah.
And there was a really big claim where a lady took her wedding dress and hung it up on the fire expression system and hit the little
Bowl.
tab.
Yeah.
And when she did, not only did it just bring out the water, but you have all that rust and
Yes.
everything, and so it ruined her dress. White dress was just covered in rust stains, plus it flooded an entire hotel.
Oh gosh.
So,
Yeah.
whoopsies.
Little things like that, I guess. Wow.
Another thing that just came to mind. Let's just say, a college student has a computer or iPhone or whatever. They go and pawn the thing, but then they don't want their folks to know about it, and folks come in there and go, "Hey, their deal got stolen." I mean,
Well, that would be insurance fraud.
okay. Well, I'm just
Yeah.
wondering how
Don't do that.
Don't
what
do
do you got? What do you have to do to prove that something actually got?
Well, anything you have to back it up, no pun intended for backing up a computer. But anyway, you don't have to show a receipt that you bought it. It is helpful. You know, most of those things you can pull up online, but you are going to, at the very minimum, you're going to need to make a list of what you lost.
All right, so there's a lot involved.
Sorry, yeah.
There's a lot involved, but what the folks need to do is get a hold of you guys, talk to y'all about how to do these things and all the stuff with your kids going on. And I'll tell you another thing, make sure 100% that when you send your kid off to college, you've got enough insurance on that car.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I have a whole thing about
Maybe
cars.
we should talk about that next Wednesday.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. Well,
Okay.
next, because there are lots of auto
Exposures.
exposures at
Yeah.
college.
Yeah, I was doing a little research and I actually found tuition.
Yeah, which
That
I'd
was
never heard of that.
interesting. I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to look into
Or
that.
if you
more.
had a covered loss and had to drop out of school, it would refund your tuition. We never
it's
saw
for-
that kind of
it's
insurance.
Illness or injury.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm gonna be looking into that later.
Well, that's a good preview then for next week because, when our kids get these bright ideas about being Ubers and Door Dashers and stuff like that.
Yes,
So
there's
we gotta,
a lot of issues with that.
Yeah,
Yes.
so we'll be talking about that.
I
coming up.
remember when our son Matt went off to college, and I was like, don't be a DoorDash driver, Mom. I wasn't going to. I was like, okay, but don't.
Yeah.
And don't take anybody for a ride and charge them for it. Mom, I know, but I had to tell you.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that next week.
Yes.
All right, how do folks get a hold of you guys?
They can come see us on the second floor of Sierra Bank Building or call us at 940-549-2525.
If you happen to be in Hudson Oaks, we are at 2950 Fort Worth Highway, Suite 500. The phone number there is 817-770-0096.
And if your kid hasn't walked off with your laptop yet, visit us at brianins.com. That's Brian with a Y.
There you go. That's how to get a hold of them. All right, we're going to hear from some of our great sponsors, and then we're going to come back in a second. We're going to have your